parents, this is something I've had to figure out, and I really want to encourage other parents as well, because I know there are parents out there who think their children's choices reflect on them, who think their children's choices are their fault. Not always. Yes, there are cases, sorry, there are cases, obviously, where we are at fault, where it is our fault, where we didn't train our children correctly, where we didn't give them the correct example, where we didn't teach them, where we didn't guide them, where we, even though we had the choice, exposed them to the wrong things. That is a whole other situation. But even that, God can forgive, and he can undo in a way. Everyone, if David could be forgiven and changed after he knew God, and yet he did what he did with Bathsheba, which is bad enough, and then he murdered a man, an innocent, loving, loyal man, and yet God could forgive him. Most importantly, David prayed for a new heart. He realized that it wasn't just about the fact that he'd been caught, but it showed that his heart was dirty. And so our children, they can have that moment. They might need to have a Damascus moment, like Saul, but they can have that moment. So don't give up, even if you've been the bad example, even if you've allowed them to be with bad examples when you could have stopped it. There is still time to go back. What I do suggest you do then is sit with your child and say, Johnny, I realized that I was not what God wanted me to be to you as a parent. I realized that I did ABC, and that was actually wrong of me. I would actually like you to forgive me for failing you. And you can explain why. I know it sounds weird, but explain why. Because if a child can see that their parent can be humble, it's an example for them to also be humble. So if a parent can say, I really shouldn't have been beating you left, right, and center, and I'm sorry, I bet it has caused bitterness, resentment within you. I can't undo what I've done. It goes a long way. It makes a difference. Believe me, it does. And mean it, because this is your child. This is your child. You love them, I hope. And you love them for who they are, not what you want them to do or to be only. So there are those people who have done wrong, who didn't raise their children in the right way. Ask for forgiveness. Tell them where you erred. Tell them why you're saying it. Say that I've noticed that, you're doing this and that, and it really bothers me because I'm worried that it's my example that has led to you not having strong principles. It could be, it's very true, nature versus nurture. It's true. Environment does have an impact on children. But environment is not the only impact. And environment might never impact the child at all. For example, look at me. I'm not perfect. I'm not saying I'm perfect, but I just want to show. I grew up with both parents shouting. They were shouters. They were beaters. They didn't have the same principles I have. I'm also going to do another video just today on their reaction to when I started dressing modestly, to show you that everything was against me as a person, or in terms of my values that I would have and the behavior that I would exhibit. They both yelled. They both yelled at each other. They both yelled at us. They hit us. So I grew up, yelling was normal. Beatings were normal. Canings were normal. But you can ask all the other 7 members of my family and anyone else who has been with me. I have never in my life raised my voice at my children. There was one time when they were getting on my nerves. All 6 of them were just insane. It was loud, it was noisy, everyone was whining, this one was crying for that, this one was like, mommy, 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 but while the other one is crying and pulling me, and my teenager was saying, mom, what about this? And my son, and I just shouted. I said, I can't take this. And they laughed because it's like, mom, what are you trying to do? And I did it on purpose. I was in control. I did it to see the reaction. And it worked. They laughed. My 4-year-old was like, ha ha ha. I think I know I mentioned this before in another video. My 4-year-old says, ha ha ha, mommy shouted. You see, they are not used to a temper-filled rant, which is what I got used to. I wear glasses. I'm wearing contacts right now. And I started wearing glasses when I was 10 years old. And I remember one time I'm sitting on the bed in my room and my dad comes in. He stands at the door. He's tall. So I'm looking up at him, like listening to what he's saying. But now because I've got a frame, I have to look above my frame, obviously. So I'm looking up at him and trying to see him so I can really pay attention to what he's saying. He yelled at me for that. He said I'm looking at him cheekily. And like, I think he's stupid. Maybe I was. But I said to him, but Dad, I'm not trying to. I'm trying to see over my glasses and you're tall. You're standing up there and I'm sitting here. Then he said I was being cheeky and answering back and back chatting. And I thought, I can't actually win. Even when I'm not wrong, I am wrong. But I've never done that to my children. They may feel like it, but I always question them. I ask, what were you thinking? What was your aim? So I am not what I was raised into. I am not what I was raised by. And so even if you are a bad parent, your child doesn't necessarily have to continue the curse, as I will put it. They can be different. And unfortunately, this is where I'm going, that even if you are a good example, even if you do guide them, your children can do the opposite. Which is sad. It's sad because we don't want them to do the opposite. We want them to be what we've trained them to be and what we are. I homeschool because I want to give them that foundation. But I remember the words of a certain in-law who said to my husband, I hope those children rebel against you. And I was thinking, but your children are in school and they've also rebelled. So background, the nurturing they receive, the education they receive, the home lifestyle they have, obviously has no bearing on how they behave, given yours were free to act normally and they went berserk and are criminals, like literal criminals, jailed, charged. So upbringing does not determine character. More importantly, an adult chooses their own behavior. An adult chooses their own character, habits, but they will remember. They will remember what you taught them. Why I did this video today specifically is because of my daughter's birth mother. My daughter's birth mother is distraught because her teen daughter is pregnant and she blames herself so much, and it kills my heart. I wish our children knew that the choices they make, especially if they're detrimental to their futures, they have a huge impact. You can always stop yourself from going all the way, or you can take precaution if you're that kind of person. Because I mean, I'm not going to impose my principles on them. They're not Christian, they're not Seventh-day Adventist. They don't believe that fornication is a sin. So I'm not going to say she shouldn't have been having sex. That is not her background, her moral background. It's more about being responsible. So in that framework, I will say that no matter what you teach your child, and my point had been, that kind of, in that framework, you know that you could go on birth control. You know that you can stop when you realize things are getting too far. People do actually stop. people do make out until they're married and then have sex. Even people who are not Christian, people are saving themselves. They write how they do all the other stuff, the petting, the making out, but they don't have intercourse. So it is possible to stop yourself, especially as an 18-year-old. And also, it is also possible to go and get the morning after pill. There are options, and our townships do have clinics. So it wasn't just a matter of chance that this girl fell pregnant. And it wasn't because of her mother. Believe me, when your child is having intercourse, you are not on their minds. It's all about them and this boy who they think is their world. I hope. I don't know what they're thinking. I've only slept with one person and I thought they were my world. So I'm assuming that's what the girl was thinking. But either way, she fell pregnant. And my child's birth mom, so my child is going to be a biological aunt. She's going to have a niece or a nephew. Biologically. Not by law, but biologically. And so she felt like it's her fault. And I said, but why? I know, because we've been speaking for over 9 years now. So I said to her, I know that you have warned her about sleeping around and the consequences. I know you have. And she said, I did. Over and over, I reminded her, my child, get your education. Don't even look at a boy until university, when you're grounded and stable. And she said it in her own words, I want you to be better than I am. Because she never finished high school. And though unemployment is high, even for graduates, it does limit your opportunities, especially in South Africa. We lived in the UK for over a year. The menial jobs there pay more than the menial jobs here. And I mean, not only in pounds versus rands, but you can do more. We could have a lovely flat. Well, we could rent a beautiful flat. And we were just both working in a warehouse in a nice area. There is no way people doing our kind of factory job could have a nice flat like that here in Cape Town or here in South Africa. I was a cleaner in an old age home, just an agency worker. I didn't have pension or anything, but how much I was making there was way more than, comparatively speaking, it was actually way more than a cleaner here could ever dream. It could afford more. The food was also cheaper, so I could get more for my salary than what I can get here. So menial jobs, when I say menial, I mean like cleaning, domestic work, even cashiers who work at the tills, they get really little. It's not enough to rent a place. It really is not. So she told her child, I want you to get an education so you can be better. She would tell her, my child, having a child early is hard. It is hard being a single mother. It is hard to place your child for adoption because you know that's the only way they will eat. She told her, you lost a sibling because I had to place a child for adoption because I couldn't raise a child. I can't. She would tell her that. They slept in the same bed. As I said, they're poor. There was only one bed in their house and they slept in the same bed. So she has this intense guilt. Why couldn't, because she wasn't even told by her daughter that she's pregnant. It was someone else who told her. And she feels like she has failed her child. That maybe if she had noticed, parents, you can be God and your child will still go ahead and do exactly what you told them not to do. Look at Eve. God was literally her father. Yes, he didn't give birth to her, but God was her father. She was surrounded by a good man. Well, not surrounded, she had a good man who was very obedient, and they were conversing with angels and with God himself. Every afternoon, she would speak to God. Everything around her was designed and calculated to make her and keep her pure and obedient. Today, let's be honest, the devil is cleverer than we parents will ever be. the devil is more exciting than we parents will ever be. We are fighting against a formidable enemy as parents. At school, she was going to school. What were the other kids doing at school? Having sex. What are the other kids watching? What is she watching? What is she seeing on social media? Mom or dad? It's against you. The world is against you. Even my own children, we gave a laptop to a relative. When it came back with pornography that the relative had downloaded. And it ignited in my two older children an interest in something they should have never been interested in. I kept my house pure. We don't even watch normal TV. They don't even know Beyonce. Well, I hope they don't. I mean, as in my younger four definitely don't know Beyonce. But what they saw brought in by someone else on our laptop ignited an interest in things they should not be watching, which they will then find. We gave them laptops to do schoolwork. We took them away. We gave them iPads, tried to block things. We had to take it away because they were downloading things they should not be downloading. And this is them knowing that they don't have our permission. It's only for schoolwork and for educational purposes. So if I have children who are disobedient to me, what more you, whose children are surrounded by children, all the children doing silly things, teachers probably also promoting silly behavior. It is not your fault. Eve, who didn't have all that pressure around her, just one person, and she fell. She forgot everything her father had taught her, her very perfect father, her father who had no flaws, who had never, ever, ever messed up in any way, perfect father. Yet she went against his will. She disobeyed him, even though he had given her clear instruction, just like you have given your children clear instruction. Just like you've explained to your children the consequences of their behavior. Your children know that if they do what you don't want them to do, they will disappoint you. Eve knew, and Adam knew, and yet they went ahead and still disobeyed their perfect father while living in a perfect home surrounded by perfect beings. God, the Father, couldn't make his adult children perfect. Why would you believe you can? It's not your fault. It is not your fault. What you can do when they do go astray is pray for restoration. Don't waste time beating yourself up. God didn't beat himself up. He knew, he realized it's not his fault. Eve made her own choice. She wasn't thinking in that moment. It was all about her. And when your child goes and has that drug, smokes, sniffs, injects, whatever they do, when they go and have unprotected intercourse, expose themselves to so many diseases, it's not about you. It's about the child. As for the consequences, it's up to you. You know the consequences God gave to Adam and Eve. That is tough love. It is tough, but it is love as well. I cannot dictate what kind of consequences you must give your children, depending on what they do, what they decide. But I will say that the best way to show your disappointment is by having or giving consequences. So if they fall pregnant, tell them, all right, you must come up with a plan. You can help with the clothing, help, but don't take over. They did it. They made their bed. Let them lie in it. And if the bed is thorny, then so be it. Please don't blame yourself and don't try and soften or cushion the consequences, but be there and love them. Adam and Eve had to leave their beautiful home. They had to leave their angels who they used to talk to. They never spoke to God face to face again, as far as I know. But they always knew that their father, who had punished them, loved them. And they were adults, and yet they were punished. Revelation 3 verse 19 says, As many as I love, I rebuke and chasten. Why? Be zealous, therefore, and repent. So, what I want us to do as parents is not blame ourselves when our children go astray. It's most likely they will. But do work on them to chastise them, chasten them, rebuke, reprimand, let them live with the consequences, but never let them feel that you no longer love them. And that is my soul food from the sickbed today. We want our children to repent, and that is our hope, that they see their wrong and come back to their Father in heaven. Because honestly, ultimately, they may have disobeyed us, they may have disappointed us, but they disappointed their own Maker and Creator. Let's go out there, do our best, pray, and hope for the best.